Welcome back to Virteva's Let's Talk podcast, a show where we unpack the latest and greatest Microsoft cloud technologies to help your business teams be successful. It's episode 25, and I'm Scott Ludwan, and joined again by Holly Peterson, our training and enablement lead. And this week, we're going to be talking about all the changes that have recently come to the Copilot web experience for both businesses and personal users, and kind of giving our feedback on, are those positive changes? Are they negative changes? Is it kind of in the middle? But we'll get into that in just a moment. Before we get into the news and announcements for the week, I'd like to again ask you if you could hit those like and subscribe buttons and share the video with friends, colleagues, people that you work with to kind of get the message out to more people. We recently passed 1,600 subscribers, and we are well on our way to 2,000 by the end of the year. So it only takes you a moment if you can hit that subscribe button and like the videos, as it really helps get the content out to more people. We'd really appreciate it. All right, Holly, welcome back to the show. It's been a few weeks. Really excited to have you on. Last week on the show, Chris and I had the opportunity to kind of look at some of the Wave 2 stuff, specifically the Copilot Pages experience. This is going to be another Demo Palooza episode. So if you tuned in last week, we kind of set the stage at the beginning of the show with you're going to get a lot more out of the YouTube version of this than the audio. But again, we will do our best to describe for the audio-only listeners what we're looking at here. So Microsoft has been making a bunch of changes with Copilot, and as part of the Wave 2 piece, there have been some major changes made to the web versions of Copilot for business, regular everyday consumer, so the personal version of it, and also the web app experience on your phone. So the phone version of this looks quite a bit different now, and I'll kind of superimpose kind of like some recordings from my phone as we go throughout the show, so I don't have to hold it up the entire time. It is, especially on the phone, on the iPhone app, and I'm not sure if the Android app is much different, but I assume that it's probably relatively the same, is it is a more kind of material design card-based layout as opposed to kind of like a shrunken or scaled down version of what we were experiencing previously on the web. And if you're looking at the screen, the old web layout looked very similar to what's on the left-hand side of the screen. The new layout for consumers, which we're focusing on the right side of the screen, that's where really the big change is. So, Holly, have you had an opportunity to play around with the mobile app yet?
Just a bit. And I think that the biggest difference that you'll see if you're licensed for Copilot, you still have a lot of guidance around prompting and sort of Microsoft showing you the possibilities of what you can do with your license, what you can do with Copilot. And this specifically, I think, you know, when we work in the Microsoft 365 space, we're aware of everything you can do in the web, everything you can do on your computer, combined in your license. And unfortunately, I think that sometimes people don't always go out to that web-based experience. So I love that the app kind of pulls you back into just plain old chatting with Copilot a little bit more. I find that a lot of people still, you know, even if they're licensed for Copilot, don't really leave the apps that they use it in. So they use it in Outlook, they use it in Word, but they're not going out to that kind of more free-form space, which I think is really powerful.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that from a mobile app standpoint, what Microsoft was aiming to do with it was a more card-based design to help you find the things that you're looking for. Also, one of the big things that they added into it is they added voices into it. So you can kind of like get this new Copilot like mini podcast. Like Google announced that they're doing something similar to this with an AI podcast. But Microsoft's is more about like, hey, choose the news stories that you're interested in, and we'll have some AI voice. You get to choose from 4 different options. Read it back to you. My experience with that has been, you know, it works pretty well. I think that the voices are a little kind of robotic feeling.
Yeah, they're just a little uncanny. Just a little uncanny.
I mean, like, so I use Edge at work, and I like to actually use the screen reader feature quite a bit, where you kind of go into reading mode and then you can choose your voice. I love Microsoft. I think it's Stefan. That is my favorite voice to listen to. It's got a really nice kind of like soothingness to it. I also speed it way up too, because it reads a little bit slow.
I agree. It does read a little bit slowly, but I always feel like age-wise, I have passed into voice to text. So I'm actually really, really enjoying for certain use cases in Copilot, the
Yep.
kind of conversation style where I can talk and it can talk and we can hear each other.
Yep.
I actually really think that it's a powerful experience. However, if you are not like a voice to text person, it can feel a little awkward at first. But if you've been doing that a lot in your day-to-day life, it kind of becomes natural. Obviously, certain like longer responses, like you said, you
Yep.
are sort of like checking your watch, waiting for it to finish reading. But if you're having kind of a short back and forth, it can be pretty cool.
So I've been paying for a ChatGPT subscription since the summer, and the big thing that actually got me to finally pay rather than just use the free version was they introduced those new voice options, and the voice
Yes.
options have actually been there since I think like November last year,
Yep.
but they improved on them with the 4.0 model. And there, you get to choose from like four different voice
Yep.
experiences, and that's slick. And that's really
Yeah.
what Microsoft is doing in the new mobile app is they're trying to give you a similar experience to that. Though I will say,
Absolutely.
at least in the experience that I've had with the Copilot app so far, is I don't feel like it's as slick of as an experience as the GPT version or the
Yep.
OpenAI version, but I think that it will get there over time.
Yep, absolutely. I think it's kind of early days. And as we've all experienced with Microsoft, for all of the, kind of warts that some of this stuff has when it's first rolled out, the only way we tend to move is up and move forward. So I am looking forward to hearing and seeing more about this because the ability to have a natural sort of natural language spoken conversation or an audio conversation with Copilot, I think has a lot of implications, and something that I've been focused on is accessibility lately. And I love that this tool is becoming even more, it's good for people that have all of their senses and abilities, but it's even better for people that don't. I really think that this is going to be an exciting frontier and something I'm going to be keeping an eye on in the next year.
Yeah, and I like the accessibility piece of it that you talked about it too, because when you're using Copilot on a day-to-day basis and you're not at work, you're not carrying your computer around with you so that you can
Yep.
type onto it. So I think it's important for all major businesses to
Yep.
have good, well-functioning web apps. And I'm happy that Microsoft has made some improvements to make it easier to use on the
Yep.
go so that you can just talk to it. And just like you, Holly, like I generally prefer, even when I'm sending text messages, I dictate text messages, I
Yep. Me
dictate
too.
emails, I ask questions into Copilot verbally when I can. I have an iPhone 15 Pro. I have the action button, if you're familiar with that,
Yep.
mapped to ChatGPT voice assistant, so I can just double,
Right.
almost like a Siri alternative,
It's
to ask
so
a question,
good.
and it's very very handy.
Yeah, I have mine is I don't have the latest one, but I have a 13 mini, so as you can imagine, like I don't like to type very much on my phone. So it's really, I mean, the voice to text thing, once you get the hang of it, I just find myself using it more and more. And like you said, once you get better at dictating, it's a skill. It really is a skill.
And
You
it goes
start
to
to
talk
just
about
use it all the time, even
And
on your computer.
goes into what we've been talking about for months now is these AI chatbot tools are conversational. You're not just doing a
Yep,
Google search. You're actually using the voice features to have a conversation with it are very handy. Though,
absolutely.
albeit if you're sitting in a cube farm at work and there's a bunch of people around you, you probably don't want to be having a conversation with a
Yeah.
chatbot back and forth. People think that you're crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this, the ability to, if you have something complex that you want to type, sometimes it's a little easier for you to say. But I know, like I said, dictation is a skill. Any one of our listeners or subscribers that tries this, and I encourage you to try it, sometimes the second you hit, the speech button, like you want to say something to Copilot, you might freeze up a little bit. So just start practicing voice to text, practice dictation. There's dictation tools in Word. Once you get more accustomed to how this works, you won't look back. It is so slick, and I'm a big proponent now of voice dictation.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that too, because I haven't played with the Copilot voice dictation, at least in the new version, as much. But I know with like Word and Outlook, is you can
Yep.
hit that dictation button, and you can give yourself pauses and time to think, and it
Yep.
won't just stop the dictation process. And
Exactly.
that's something that I believe that these web versions will likely do if they don't already do today.
Right.
Okay, so we've talked about the mobile app quite a bit.
Yep.
Let's actually talk about how these apps are different kind of at their base. So
Yep.
the first thing I want to do is, so we're kind of showing the difference between both of them up there right now. I'm just
Yep.
going to maximize this screen so that we can
Yep.
see this is the new version of the Copilot business experience. So
Yep.
previously, you would go to a very similar page like this.
Yep.
However, things that have been added to this now are over on the left-hand side of the screen. Is you can now see your home button, which will take you to kind of like that portal.office landing page where
Yep.
all of your documents, OneDrive, everything you've been working on lives.
Yeah.
You have the create button, which will open up the ability to create new documents. It's very similar to going to the homepage. It just kind of jumps you into something a little bit quicker there.
Yep.
You can see that it just basically dropped me off to the homepage for how do you
Right.
create a document, a PowerPoint, a workbook, and gives you some general ideas.
Yeah.
You have your OneDrive, you have your feed options, which I'm not going to click because it docks everything in my.
Yep.
But this is also interesting too. So the feed option has been moved to this new Copilot experience and this new
Yep.
kind of home experience. It recently got pulled out of the Outlook mobile app. It's also going to kind of getting pulled back a little bit more from the Teams app as well.
Right.
So it's being kind of deprecated in some places, but it's being force focused in others. So I'm glad
Right.
they're not removing it because the feed feature really has become kind of like
Yeah.
the new Microsoft Delve experience, which is retiring December of this year, by the way. Um, but yeah, the feed feature has really kind of become more of like that Delve based
Yep.
feature. And I don't think that it gets a lot of use. When I talk to people at different organizations, a lot of them don't even know that it exists. And it is a great way to find documents that you've been working on with other people, find related emails, stream recordings, stuff like that, without
Right.
having to dig through and make 5 or 6 different clicks. It usually just pops up there. And even if you're not collaborating directly with someone, but they're working on something that's in a shared library, it will
Mm-hmm.
also show up in the feed to give you updates that they're working on it.
Right.
Um,
And I will. I just want to mention it is the just really the Microsoft 365.com portal for licensed users is if you have an E level license, you're probably not going here a lot, and it is just sort of criminal. More organizations should push this environment, period, because there's still a lot of web based experiences that are only available in the browser. And the
I'm glad you brought that up
search
because
function,
yeah,
hands
go ahead.
down the best in the web. So that's kind of one of those things where, when we focus back on Copilot, that is when you license your team for Copilot, but you don't already have habits on going to Microsoft365.com, using these web-based experiences, you are lopping off that value. Get people going here because the Copilot experience here is rich, but so is everything else. So had to just do my pitch on this because I really really dislike how few people are sort of served this environment with their E-level license.
Yeah, and sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off midway, but I'm very glad that you brought that up because so we've talked for a few months now about how the Copilot experience is changing in Edge and changing in
Mm-hmm.
Windows. And so at the beginning of this year, there was a Copilot for Windows that would kind of pop off on the left side of the screen over
Yep.
here, and it would let you interact with system settings,
Yep.
which was great. I liked it. But it was really just kind of a fold out of Microsoft Edge. So around spring of this year, Microsoft made a change and they said, you know what, we're going to not allow it to touch system settings for one reason or another. And I'm not exactly sure. They never really said why they weren't going to let it do it. I think that has something to do with Copilot PCs rolling out in June.
Yeah.
But then they said, you know what, we're going to make it an app that's pre-installed on every Windows 11 device that'll be automatically pinned to your taskbar. And who, boy, Holly, were people mad?
You can change anything you want, but don't mess with the taskbar. Don't automatically turn on stuff in the taskbar. People get freaked out.
So It showed up automatically in the taskbar. It was automatically pinned. IT administrators at businesses, they were not happy about
They were very
it. So
unhappy.
Microsoft then backtracked again. So the Copilot app is no longer pre-pinned for business users.
Right.
For personal users, I believe it is still pre-installed and pre-pinned.
Yep.
Very least with 24H2 for Windows 11 is it does get pre-installed, because I actually
Yep.
had removed it and it went back up when I upgraded last week.
Yep.
But for business users, so it's not pre-installed anymore, it's not pre-pinned. Now they want you to go to the Microsoft 365 app from the App Store, which is basically what we're looking at here on the screen.
Yep.
This is the web app version of it. You can actually download a FAT client of it, which, let me see if I can actually pull it up here.
Yeah. That's kind of the, Copilot was getting pinned and pushed out to people before IT admins really even fully understood what was going on with it. So they didn't really appreciate, this, which, I mean, it's perfectly safe for people to use, as they're authenticated, but, there's still a lot of fear of the unknown around it.
Yeah, so you can see that I pulled it up and I kind of have them layered over the top of each
Yep.
other, and one's in dark mode because in my day-to-day I cannot live outside of dark.
Yep.
For the show I try and brighten it up a little bit. But it's basically the exact same app. The only difference is this is a Microsoft, what is it called? Like a UWP, a Universal Windows app or something like that.
Yeah, it's just like an iframe app, right? We're really looking at a website, but it's just a window versus a browser window.
Or it's a container for Copilot. But yes, so Microsoft's change is they went from the Windows sidebar app, to a pre-pinned app. And then they said, you know what? We're going to make it optional. You can use the Microsoft 365 app if
Right.
you want to. If not, you can have your customers just go to the web app, which is generally what I prefer to use on my
Yep.
day-to-day. But
Yeah, me too.
So that's the long journey of how this has changed to get us to the new app. Again, we kind of demoed it a little bit.
Right.
The one other big thing that I wanted to point out, well, two big things that I wanted to point out is you'll notice when you switch over to web, and it defaults to work now instead of web.
Yep.
When you're signed in with your enterprise credentials, is the notebook button is gone, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I liked using that feature quite a bit, and I have not been able to, track down what they did with it. I don't know if it was improved or what's going on with it, but that has not been there for me recently.
My assumption, again, I'm not quite sure, is that, we use a notebook for sort of longer responses. Maybe they've upped the character limit, for just this regular interface.
So I asked Copilot, it sounds like you're having trouble finding the notebook button. And it told me features can be moved or updated in the software. I don't think that it actually knows what I'm referring to when I say the notebook button.
But this interface, like, again, we'll just know that even, we haven't even hit Ignite yet. This could still see some changes. One of the features that I wanted to point out on the screen that is a change that I'm not so keen on is the enterprise protection button is a small little black and white shield, and you might miss it. I personally really liked when I would show people the web app, even if they didn't have licenses, right? Just the free version, that green shield, which was very prominent in the past, showed that you are signed in, that you have enterprise data protection. It is safe for you to use with your, as you're authenticated, your chats aren't being used for training the models, all that good stuff. Now they've made it really small, and there's maybe a little bit of a concern on my part to kind of show how people can immediately see that they're authenticated and their chats are protected. That piece, Microsoft does this they do a lot of visual refreshes, and they like things to look very homogeneous, but I really do wish that green means go was still there.
Yep. And I did pull it up. So if you have that same complaint, you can come and you can send feedback directly to Microsoft.
I will send them feedback. I mean, I get it. It looks 100%
go into the well that ends at the center of the earth, and it'll get to in like 3 years. So yes, you can send feedback.
Well, it's just one of those things that I thought it was really helpful before as just that visual cue. Now
I
it's
did. I
barely
preferred it as
there.
well. And the other thing that I like that's missing too is so they used to have kind of your company branding would show up in the
Yep.
top left page, so you knew that you were in the company version of
Yep.
Copilot, and that's been removed as well.
Yeah.
I'd love to see that come back. So the one last thing that I wanted to touch on while we're on the commercial version of it for businesses is we've talked about how much we love Microsoft Designer and what you're able to do with image creation there. And I am happy to say that it has finally made its way over to the Copilot business app.
Right.
However, it has once again been kind of shadow renamed, and it is now called the Visual Creator. So if you come over to the Visual Creator tab in the pop out and we say we want to generate an image, it gives you a couple of examples, not as many as I was used to seeing, kind of like
Yep.
in the regular Copilot side where it kind of gives you like six. But if you come over here, we can it'll give us some examples. So we'll say generate an image of a simple gold trophy with confetti to recognize a job well done. We'll click the send button and it'll start to go through the image creation process. And this is something that you could do already in the consumer version of Copilot, but you could
Yep.
not do it in the work version. So I'm excited to see this fall over. Also, I think it's funny too that they call it the visual creator, but then it's clearly still called designer in
Designer.
now.
Yeah.
So I guess someone just hasn't gotten around to updating a lot.
Right. I
This
don't.
tool continues to get better as well.
Yeah.
Like I use it for a lot of presentations and it
Yep.
creates some sharp images.
Yeah, I've done visual creation in a lot of my Copilot demos and things like that, especially when I'm training people on the basic web client, and people are always impressed on what it can do. The something to keep in mind, and we could talk about a little bit more on the kind of consumer version, but the token experience, things like that, how many images you can generate in a day, and in a period of time, very, very processor intensive on Microsoft's part. So they do limit some visual creation so that we don't overwhelm their processing capacity. But I'm hopeful
Yeah,
that with their potential reopening of 3 Mile Island, they're going to start generating a lot more of their own power to run this stuff. And I mean that if that doesn't tell you something about it, how much energy it takes to run some of this stuff, you know.
Holly, I think I have our thumbnail for the week.
I love it. Yeah,
I don't know why it put the trophy on a number
I
two.
just know. Good, but not the best.
We'll Photoshop a Copilot logo right in the middle, and we'll give Copilot the number two award.
Nice. But it's one of those things where I think for those people, again, follow the thread of what this means for your organization. You can come up with unique visuals for presentations, rather than spending time combing through image search looking for the right image. It also is helpful because we've seen over the years, Scott, I know you've seen it, I've seen it, copyright violations of people being like, I'll just pull this random image into my PowerPoint presentation. I really am not thinking about copyright or things like that. Whereas here, you can sort of create unique images for use in your presentation. So I think it's a good thing in general, but for some of us, if your role calls for this type of work, it's a great tool. But I'm sure that there are other people, other subscribers, other viewers of this video that be like, I don't know when or how or why I would generate an image.
Yep.
So it can be very, very helpful to some.
I want to say too, I checked out Designer recently. That Designer actually, so I'm a big fan of, I think it's like the stamp or the sticker creator for our
Yep.
presentations with like our Copilot Expeditionary package. I love using that stuff in there because it helps fill the white space out a little
Yep.
bit. I want to say that I saw that they have a meme generator in there now. I haven't played a lot with it yet, but I'm interested to see how that evolves over time. All right. So we took a look at kind of what's changed over on the business side. I
Yep.
think that for the most part, that experience has remained the same. It's just kind of a new sidebar and kind of embedded
Yep.
into the M365 web app. The big change is really to the personal app. And I've heard some feedback from people that have used this that they feel like the responses have gotten a little bit worse. and just the general kind of look and feel is, it's quite an adjustment.
It's really different.
It's almost like they designed it for a more web-based approach, but it's not exactly the same as the mobile app that we saw
Right.
earlier on the show either. So let me expand this out. I'm signed in with my personal account here because that's the
Yep.
other big change is you can't get to this type of experience anymore with a business account. You
Right.
have to be logged in a personal account. So right off the bat, I went to copilot.microsoft.com, and this is literally the first thing that it gave me. There's no real big Copilot logo or Microsoft
Yep.
branding on the page, which is, again, to me, a little bit of a head scratcher. Instead, what it did was it gave me a random fact about the day. So we're recording this on the 18th. For some reason, it gave me information on Leif Erikson Day, which happened on the 9th.
I, I'll say as a Scandinavian American, Leif landed first. But yeah, I think it's a little bit, it is very strange. It's very stark. I mean, the card experience where you get prompt examples, things like that, it's sort of curious, like what,
So
what does it want you to do? But yeah, if you press the Copilot button, it's almost like I wish this was the landing experience.
yeah. And so I wonder if it was a cached experience for me, and that's why it kind of happened to me
Yeah.
that way. And you know what? We can test that here real quick. So let's go in an in private window
Yep.
to Copilot. So it opens you up to, hi, I'm Copilot, your AI companion. And then you click on get started. And then it asks you to identify yourself. So we'll say, I'm Scott. Nice to meet you, Scott. How should my voice sound? And then you kind of get to preview these voices.
Yep.
So, and I'm not sure if these are going to come through in the recording or not, but you can choose wave, groove,
Yep.
meadow, or canyon.
Yep.
I'm just going to skip it for right now. And then it kind of takes you to this landing page. So this is what we were looking at after I clicked through that
Yep.
button. So we'll go back to that page. And again, this is very similar to what we were showing off earlier, kind of in
Yep.
that embedded format. It kind of gives you some ideas to choose from, but it's, it looks considerably different than what people
Right.
were used to. Maybe Microsoft just really thinks that we need to jump out at you like through the screen and say, hey, just click a button. How do I video games to play with a beginner? And then you click it, kind of gives you a new animation, and then it starts,
Yep.
instead of like the Copilot experience that we're used to where it kind of like types it out in front of you, is it's
Yep.
like fading it in over time. So it's
Yep.
a more modern kind of material type design to how you're
Absolutely.
presented with that data. Now, that being said, if you want to just type in a message like you were used to, is there not a way to start a new chat? No, don't want to click that.
I
All
think
right.
if
So
you
if
do
you wanted
the
to,
first message, I think it will let you start a new conversation.
so it doesn't give me the option to start a new conversation. It's just allowing me to type a new message to Copilot.
Ah.
So let's say, here comes Holly. Are you ready?
Yep.
Who are the Buffalo Bills playing this weekend? I feel like it's been 9 months since I made any sort of Buffalo Bills reference on the show.
I'll allow it. I'll allow it. Mostly because I know I think your fan base is, slightly more rabid than ours. Just
Oh,
slightly.
he told me who the Buffalo Bills are playing this weekend, the Tennessee Titans. The game's going to be on CBS. And now, because it's contextually in that conversation, I'm going to ask it, how many interceptions does Josh Allen have this year? Josh Allen has zero interceptions this year. I already knew the answer to this. I'm just bragging.
I'm sure. I'm sure you did. I actually would say if you could be the Buffalo Bills co-pilot behind a curtain somewhere, I'm sure it would work out just fine. But the thing that I can see is if you start a new question, it already sort of like clears you into another conversation, but it's always sort of leaving the conversation open to try and get you to keep talking with it.
Yep. Holly, I think we may have a tie for the thumbnail of the show.
I mean, I'll let you choose. Although it does say bulls on it, so kind of close, co-pilot.
There are the bulls up here. So yeah, it's still AI image creation.
I know. I feel like it's still there. We're not quite ready for prime time.
So one of the interesting things here too, worth looking at, is so I asked it to make me an image in the new personal,
Yep.
Copilot, not the commercial one. Notice
Yep.
how normally it would do 4 images for
Yep.
you, but because you're using the personal version, which is free, is it gave me one, and it also didn't give me the ability to try again. I would have
Yep.
to text prompt Copilot to do something better.
Right.
So
Right.
you can kind of see the changes. For the most part, it's been accurate on the stuff that we've been asking it. Though I have heard that you know, it's hit and miss. Your mileage may vary, so we
Right.
may not get an inaccurate response out of the show. But you can see again how it's a little bit different than the previous version.
Right.
You do have the ability to dictate here. Again, I'm not sure how this is going to work because I'm using my camera for the show. So Copilot is talking to me right now, and it says that it's listening.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure that it can't hear me though because I'm using the mic for the show. But
Yeah.
you basically pop this open and then have a conversation with it.
Right.
Again, it gives you a little bit of a different experience. I'd be
Right.
interested to see if at some point we see this type of experience come to the consumer or business version as well,
Yeah.
or yeah, commercial or business version as well.
And
Because you know
just a
it is a little bit of a nicer look, right?
Yeah, and just a reminder, just so everyone has some clarity on it, just a reminder, this free version, that the kind of consumer version that Scott's looking at, this is available to anyone, whether you
Yep.
have a Microsoft 365 license, you could use if you didn't have a Copilot business license. The only thing is it is not ever going to be grounded in your company data. It's
Correct.
just web data. Now, it looks like in the plus button you can give it some sort of reference file, but again, when we're not seeing that enterprise data, I'm not seeing anything that talks about enterprise data protection, things like that. So, for those of you that are business users that are watching this, I would be wary about sharing, what you're uploading and sharing with Copilot in this particular environment. You should always be
Yep.
looking for that sort of enterprise data protection, see the verbiage, see the shield, letting you know that your chats are protected.
Yep, 100%. With the business version of it, Microsoft says that they do not use any of your tenant information, any of the information that you upload to it outside of Copilot. They don't share it, they don't train the model. If you were using the personal version of it, that may be a little bit different. I'm sure that they are
Yeah,
getting something out of it. The one thing that I have been kind of tentatively and anxiously not waiting to see, but expecting to happen is I think that at some point we are going to see on this right version, the consumer version, the free version, I think that there's going to be advertisements that are coming to this sooner or later. I have not seen a lot of them pop up. I have occasionally seen, a link or like a
right,
footnote that points me to an advertiser. Also worth noting too in this version, the new version, is that plugins button was there as well, and I don't see that there anymore either.
right,
So that's an interesting kind of takeaway, and I wonder if more of that stuff is headed to the Copilot Pro experience, which we're not demoing today, but is a separate product that's out there for consumers that doesn't work with a Microsoft tenant like Microsoft 365 Copilot,
right,
but is grounded in your Microsoft 365 personal subscription. So data
right.
that you have out there, it can reference, and it can reference and help you create files faster and stuff like that based on what you have in your OneDrive.
hmm
All right, so we're right at about 40 minutes for the show, Holly. Any closing notes or thoughts on the difference between the two? Anything that maybe we missed as we went through?
I think the thing to for all the people that are listening and watching, the thing that I would like to mention as we're kind of coming in towards the end of the year, generative AI and Copilot have been around, and I think it's been very new. And we've had a very, our customer sentiment has oftentimes been very wait and see. Like, I don't really know what this is. I don't know how it can be helpful. I'm not really sure if we're ready to pay for it. I'm not even sure if we're ready to talk about it with our end users. And my hope is that you can see the sheer amount of investment and change that's going into Copilot and really other generative AI tools is these tools are not going away. They're going to become a bigger part of the work that we do in business environments at all at all roles. So the important thing to think about probably for 2025, and I would say, Ignite is probably going to blow the lid off of some of this even more,
Yep.
is that you need to figure out how to make generative AI a part of the work that's happening in your environment. Because chances are people are already using it in your environment. As Scott showed you, you can go to copilot.microsoft.com however you want. You can go and use the free version, or you could use the enterprise version. So people can go to these sites. It's important for our IT teams to understand them, acknowledge them, figure out how to put them to work in your environment. I find them incredibly helpful. Just incredibly helpful. Scott and I have also done some kind of guided pilots through using Copilot, and we've found some really, really amazing results with people. So my closing thing here, this is, we're going to keep talking about Copilot because Microsoft is going to keep developing Copilot. So for anyone who just thinks like you're going to ride out the Copilot stuff, think back to Teams. Remember when Teams was new and everyone was like, I'm not really sure about this whole Teams thing. And Microsoft never took their foot off the gas with that. And I think this is going to be a really similar experience. So keep investigating, stay curious, everyone. If you haven't already tried it, go out and start practicing using it, because that prompt writing, the generating content, this is something that you don't want to fall behind on. So get started if you haven't already towards the end of the year.
Very well put, Holly. I actually, for a change, do not have anything to add to anything you just said. It is not going away at this point. That is the biggest takeaway. And if you are not using it yet, you need to start using it, or at least start exploring the possibilities of using it, or as a business, or even as a person outside of a business. You're going to get left behind a little bit.
100%. So start dipping your toes in. Now.
Holly, thank you again so much for stopping by, and thank you all for tuning in. If there were any news or announcements today that you want to dig into further, we've made them available in the show notes. If your organization is interested in Microsoft 365, or hey, you're already using it and you need help with managing current services or implementing new ones, you can contact Virteva by emailing us at letstalk@virteva.com, or by visiting our website at www.virteva.com. And if you made it this far, Holly, what do we need people to do?
We need you to like and subscribe and share this podcast with people you know.
That's it. All right, everybody. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you in a few weeks.